very pleased to welcome to the stage Commissioner David Rosner. Commissioner Rosner joined FERC as a commissioner in June 2024, so has now been on the commission for going on 2 years here before long. Was chair from August 13th, 25 until October 23rd, 25, and I also have to make sure and mention that Commissioner Rosner is a former staff member at the Bipartisan Policy Center here in Washington, so we're happy about that. And Commissioner Lindsay C. Commissioner C. was appointed to the commission, joined the commission also in June 2024, and so both of our two commissioners here on stage have about the same tenure. I was going to ask which of you actually got appointed first, but I thought actually, you know, I'd leave that aside, which one had more seniority over the other one. We'll just leave that aside. So anyway. Well, it
was a matter of days.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, so anyway, thank you very much for joining us here this afternoon. Commissioner Rosner, I'm going to start with you. You've previously noted the long timeline associated with issuing new regulations and an interest in exploring kind of what the industry can do in certain circumstances to do on its own. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Bipartisan Policy Center, for hosting me. It's great to be back. I'm a huge believer in bipartisanship and consensus-based decision making. So wonderful here to be talking about permitting, especially with my colleague, where we talk about permitting decisions back at the commission all the time. So a couple thoughts on doing more faster. So, you know, you mentioned it takes I've said this all over town. Regulations take a long time. We've been struggling in this country with interconnection queues, that's the line that you get into to have your power plant connected to the grid. It takes about 4 or 5 years to get a power plant just studied, just to not even construction, just through these processes. Back in 2020, the commission started work on a rulemaking that became what's known as Order 2023, which now it's 2026, and we are just about done with compliance with that rule. And that's not to say that rulemaking isn't incredibly important. I think it is, but it's not enough. And some of the things that we can do without regulation, well, in some of our RTO regions, those are the grid operators that run markets, run transmission systems. They have, on their own merit, put forward some new platforms to do this work faster. So our rulemaking that took 6 years contemplates, in most cases, getting from start to finish in the interconnection process 450-ish days. There's one grid operator, it's called MISO, that has figured out how to automate these studies. And what that means is they're using machine learning and AI and cloud computing to basically do the power flow studies faster. And what, for a very large cluster, over 100 gigawatts of new generation in MISO, their 2021 cluster, the old way with pen and paper and engineers and the software they used to use, 686 days. The new way with this automation that was invented by a PhD student in Pittsburgh, less than 10 days. And they've done a bunch of benchmarking. It's all open and transparent, thanks to the FERC tariff. It's all on their website for all my friends in the audience who also attend the MISO interconnection working group meetings. It's all there. And this has now been adopted by SPP, and other iterations of automation of various different parts of the process are getting picked up by other RTOs. And I am on an aggressive charm campaign to meet with the boards of other RTOs. Aren't you on one?
Yes, I am.
To adopt this. So there's the answer. Back to you.
I'll look forward to that meeting. Yeah. Yes. So Commissioner C., and by the way, I know that both of you spent a few hours earlier today testifying in front of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. We're going to get to that here in just a minute. Talk a little bit more about your testimony this morning and some of the things you said in your written testimony, as well as some other comments on that. But Commissioner C., let me ask you, we're here to talk about permitting today and permitting infrastructure. And the commission has a lot of jurisdiction over and makes important decisions having to do with energy infrastructure. One of the things that you've said, and I think these are your exact words, are the need to make permitting of energy infrastructure, or the need to permit energy infrastructure in a fair, predictable, and legally durable way. Can you talk a little bit more about both what it is you mean and what it is you think the commission can do on that front?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for moderating here. I'm so glad to be able to be here this afternoon. I think all of us bring our priors to our new jobs. And for me, the role that I had immediately before coming to FERC is I was an appellate litigator in a state attorney general's office. And that's really focused the way that I think about these issues of legal durability and permitting. I talked to a lot of industry leaders in West Virginia who would tell me, sort of half jokingly, they almost didn't care what a federal rule was as long as it stayed the same thing and they knew what it was. Now, they did care a lot about what the rule was because many times they wanted us to challenge it. But I think that point really resonated, the idea that having that kind of certainty is necessary to have regulatory certainty. That's what gets steel in the ground. So that's really resonated with me. The appellate lawyer side is I spend a lot of time defending state rules and attacking, sometimes successfully, federal rules. So I think I'm really bringing to this job the sense that uncertainty is a huge tool when it comes to litigation risk, whether that's uncertainty in the governing statutes or uncertainty in an agency order. So being able to make sure that we are predictable, transparent, fair, that's incredibly important. And then the other thing that I really take to heart, and we've talked about a lot and worked really well together as commissioners, is for me, it's not just enough for us to issue the order and say, job well done, if we're permitting some important infrastructure. That order really needs to stand up in court because, again, that's the sort of predictability that is actually able to get infrastructure built. So we can't always control what courts are going to do, of course, but I think making sure that we are really mindful that the decisions that we issue are legally durable, that's also an important part of our job. So that's how I bring that experience to the sort of permitting decisions that we deal with every day at the commission.
So on that legally durable point, Commissioner, and really for both of you, what is it that you're doing and what is the commission doing right now? And what can it do more of to ensure or really try to provide as much legal durability for its orders as it possibly can?
Sure. I'll take a crack at it and then hand that over to you. I think in a lot of ways, this just comes to certainty in our statutes. And I think we have seen when we joined the commission, there were a number of DC Circuit decisions that struck down commission orders that all came in a row. So I think that was really sobering for me and I know for my colleagues when we joined. Fortunately, we've seen some really helpful Supreme Court litigation that it has given clarity, especially when it comes to NEPA and our environmental responsibilities. So I think that kind of clarity has really helped us as a commission make sure that we are doing the full extent of our job in terms of our environmental review responsibilities under the law, but that we don't have to go above and beyond to things that the statute doesn't include. And again, having that sort of certainty is really helpful to make sure that we are focusing on what we need to and not adding additional layers of process that the statute doesn't require. So I think that clarity has really helped us focus on where our job begins and ends.
Agree with everything Commissioner C just said, and so I'll come at it from a different angle. I think the other thing that's really helped us work more efficiently and get better outcomes for people applying for permits and ultimately for the American people is when you have consensus among a 5-member agency like FERC, that helps us get better decisions. I also am a huge believer in the independent commission model where we have 5 folks with very different experiences and perspectives. That all shows up in the orders. And so when you have more agreement rather than less on a commission, it enables you to really take the pen where it needs to go on the order. I fear that over the past decade that we really haven't had that level of consensus at FERC. So it's been a pleasure to work with Commissioner C. I mean, I can tell you in the back of the room, when we're working on things, we can have conversations bilaterally, but not with more than 2. And I've really benefited from Commissioner C's legal expertise, and it's been very helpful. I can see it in the orders. You've had some lines that have been picked up by judges and things like that, and so it's very it's a very good model, and I look forward to continuing.
So on that point, Commissioner, with the commission being able to speak 5-0 on an issue as opposed to 3-2 or 4-1 with a very strong dissent, I mean, we've seen situations where that happens and where it can actually lead to, in some cases, it seems, more legal uncertainty because it provides a roadmap for the reviewing court in some cases to go right against in some cases where what the commission had done in its order. I mean, how is the commission going about it at this point? Both of you individually, or the chair, or the commission as a whole, to try to promote more of that, those 5-0 orders to provide maybe more durability, at least in that way.
Well, I'll jump off of where Commissioner Rosner ended. I really think that the personal relationships are incredibly helpful when it comes to building that sort of consensus. I'm very fortunate to have 4 colleagues who care deeply about the work that we're doing and care deeply about getting the right outcomes for the country. So when I think about, what does it mean to get a strong order, or when I think about writing separately or not, I think there's a lot of important work to be done behind the scenes in consensus building. And for me personally, my primary concern is making sure that that main order is something that I can stand behind and it's as strong as it is. Now, there are times, of course, when all of us do write separately. That's part of the job. But I also consider the implications, as you referenced, as a former litigator, I think sometimes having a separate statement can become fuel to undermine what we're trying to do. So there's a lot of considerations that go in, I think, for all of us. But I think making sure that we have the best path forward for the commission when we have a 5-0 order we can stand behind, that's something that's really important to me. And I've just been really grateful for my colleagues for their collaborative spirit that we are able to move forward on a lot of controversial issues in a very consensus-driven way.
Not much to add here, but I will say, part of the changing dynamic it's not to say that any commissioner, over the last decade who wrote separately or who wrote one of these orders that became a litigation, toehold or was wrong. I think one thing that's just different now is we've had Supreme Court precedent that was unanimous precedent on the scope of our environmental reviews. And so that's sort of made it easier, I think, to find consensus with that clarity. And the other thing I'll say is, that doesn't mean that our environmental reviews aren't incredibly, robust and compliant with the statute. I think that they are. If you pull any of our recent certificate orders, you'll see, environmental documents that in some cases are hundreds of pages long and have lots of information about all the direct impacts of the project. So I think, that'd be what I add.
Yeah, so let me follow up on that, Commissioner. Last June, FERC voted unanimously, I believe, to revise its regulations on the implementation of NEPA and simplify the environmental review process, and also voted unanimously to waive the operation of Order 871. Can you talk a little bit about just how it is that the Commission itself has approached NEPA in light of 7 counties, and how it is that you see that working within the context of what FERC is doing now?
I think, as I just mentioned, I think we're laser focused on the direct impacts of the project. And that means taking the really hard look that NEPA requires and ask us to disclose the impacts to the environment and to human health. I think, again, if you pull up one of these documents, you'll see that. Remind me, what was the other part of the question?
871.
Oh, 871. Oh, sorry. So on 871, we got to a unanimous place on that, and it was a strange thing. FERC used to spend maybe 2 years working on a permit, and then once we issued the permit, we would basically say you can't use it for 5 months. I think what we all thought was perhaps it was time to revisit that. For all intents and purposes, I think we left in place when a project actually affects a directly affected landowner, and when that eminent domain tool is available and there is an agreement, we voted on orders that give that landowner the right to either be heard by the commission or a court. And that's what's really important, is that, I don't think eminent domain is a partisan issue at all. It's something that, it's one of the hardest decisions we make, I think, as a commissioner. And I feel good about where we landed on that. Back to you.
I think the only thing I'd add to that is that we are entrusted to act in the public interest, and that means we need to take account of all public comments and on all of those factors there, and it's important for us to be accountable when it comes to judicial scrutiny for what we do. So this was a particular order where we had unnecessary delay baked into the system, and I think we found the right balance of being able to have a common sense solution that's able to allow construction to start sooner in areas where we have gone through that thorough review and determined that a certificate is in the public interest while still allowing all those appropriate avenues for review. So getting that balance right to make sure that we can move as quickly as we responsibly can, the tension between speed and efficiency and legal durability on the other side, it's not always perfect to figure out exactly where that line is, but that's something that we're always striving to do, is to get that land right. And I was really proud to work with my colleagues on that decision, because I think that was a really common sense solution we were able to give that helped us strike that balance.
Commissioner C., you've talked about the need to improve gas-electric coordination. This is a problem that's been talked about for a long, long time. Can you talk a little bit about? Can you talk, just for the folks here today and online, talk a little bit about what that issue is to you, why it's important, and what do you see as the biggest opportunities for the commission to act to help improve gas-electric coordination?
Absolutely. So we have two separate sectors in the energy system. We've got the gas system, the network of pipelines, and how all of that system works, and then we have the bulk power system, the transmission wires, everything that's connected there. And for a long time throughout our history as an energy sector, those two have operated separately. They were designed separately. They had different purposes. It's not true anymore that we can talk about two separate sectors. We really see this increasing connection between them. And I think one way to understand that is electricity generators, upwards 40% of them are powered by natural gas. So we really have this increasing interdependence between the two systems. They're not quite designed the same way. They don't always talk to each other the same way. We've seen a lot of improvement in recent years to increase that kind of coordination and conversations between the different industries. One of the things, especially as we're at a Permitate Summit, we always hear, pretty much every week, we've got people in our office telling us how important increased capacity on the gas system is, in particular when it comes to better coordination between the two systems. So infrastructure is critical here, and we need flexible infrastructure to be able to make sure that we have the right incentives and the right products available so that the electricity sector can have fuel security on the natural gas side. Just as a brief example, last month at our open meeting, we approved a certificate project for expansion of a natural gas pipeline system in Wisconsin. And it is exactly the kind of flexible system that a lot of electricity generators have been asking for, because it allows for more compression on the system, more looping that allows for in-pipe storage. It gives a lot of flexibility so that the gas can get where it needs to be, when it needs to be. And a lot of that came out of, I know Commissioner Rosner mentioned MISO earlier on. They recently moved to seasonal accreditation, which has a broader reserve requirement for generators when it comes to winter, especially because of a lot of the threats we've been seeing from extreme winter weather. And so that is one of the things that has led to this particular infrastructure project. We just see a need for that kind of flexibility. So I think there's a lot more room where the commission can be really proactive in helping to speed along those kind of infrastructure permitting decisions that can really give that needed capacity and flexibility.
And I'm gonna, I think you said it all on gas electric. I'm gonna riff off of that to say electric. We're very focused on getting the gas infrastructure that the country needs, that's needed. But at the same time, we're seeing huge challenges on getting access to the transmission system. And let me give you an example. In PJM, that's the part of the country that we're in, the grid operator there, we fast-tracked 51 new sources of generation. One of those plants was a natural gas combined cycle, 1,400 megawatts, located in Ohio. The upgrades needed to connect that plant to the grid it was $1.2 billion worth of upgrades, over 150 miles of either new or reconductored 345,000 volt transmission. That, to me, says we also need a lot more transmission infrastructure in this country, and we kind of need both. This is kind of common sense, but if you're going to have gas power plants, you need gas pipelines, you need storage, you need to be able to flexibly use that system. If you want to grow the electric grid and serve more new sources of demand, we also need to make sure that our transmission system is up to the task.
We're already at time, but I do want to take one more minute to ask you one quick question. And this is, you said in your testimony earlier today in front of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, Commissioner Rosner, we are staying laser focused on energy affordability. Can you touch on, just in one quick minute, each of you touch on just how you're thinking about affordability and what you're doing at the Commission right now to address that?
All right. So a couple different ways, and it'll be real fast. If you want more details, my testimony's online or come visit. But first of all, we have a problem of supply exceeding demand, and the answer to that is to build. And it means really build 3 times over. And so we need more transmission, we need more generation, we need the infrastructure to support both. So that's one. The second one is we've had a steady stream of tech companies come in and testify in front of our commission about how to connect new large loads like data centers to the grid. What they say is, we'd like to go fast and we'd like to pay for it. And so we have a string of different FERC orders to let them do that. I'm really encouraged that a bipartisan set of 13 governors and the White House, Democrats and Republicans, have all agreed on one way to do that in PJM. And that's something that I'm look forward to considering if and when PJM files it. And in the interest of time, I'll just stop there for now.
Affordability is critical, and I think it can feel in tension because we're saying that we need to build new generators and new capacity, and that's absolutely true, and that's absolutely expensive. So one of the things I think we're trying to do is it picks up on a theme that you mentioned earlier, is doing everything we can to encourage doing more with the existing systems we have, whether that's advanced transmission technologies. That's incredibly important to make sure we're making smart investments and getting the most out of what we have before we're building more. And then the last thing that I'll say is again where you ended, we have a core responsibility to make sure that we have just and reasonable rates. That makes sure that those who benefit from services are the ones who pay from them. Historically, we've seen kind of load growth grow in a really diffuse and incremental way, and we've had certain rules to meet our core mandate. Now we have huge spikes in load growth from data centers and otherwise. Our mandate doesn't change. We still have to make sure that those who are benefiting from services are the ones paying from them. I think that in this moment, we need to be open to nimble and innovative solutions, but that still move in that predictable and transparent way when we're doing something new with our core mandate, but that's given those sort of predictable rules of the roads that we have that sort of certainty for the investment we need.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Commissioner C. and Commissioner Rosner. Please join me in thanking them.